Hi, welcome to the video about making infographics with Adobe Illustrator. What I'm going to show you guys how to do today is to create some simple graphics and not so simple custom graphics using Adobe Illustrator. Um, what I'm not going to do in this video is teach you how to use basic Adobe Illustrator tools. Before you watch this video, I highly suggest that you check out um, a tutorial on how to use Illustrator. I recommend this Illustrator 2021 Quick Start Guide that's available at linkedinlearning.com. Okay, so before we get started, I wanted to mention really quick the difference between pixel and vector graphics. Illustrator is a vector graphics program, which means that it creates images and graphics using lines. Other programs, like Adobe Photoshop, for example, create images using pixels, which are little tiny dots, which is the reason why when you make a photograph that you download from the internet or an image that you've made in Photoshop bigger, it gets pixelated and blown out and really fuzzy. The advantage of using a vector graphics program like Illustrator is you can scale your graphics to make them really, really large or really, really tiny, and because they're made out of lines, they keep their quality. That's why logos are often created in Adobe Illustrator, because you can blow up a logo and put it on a billboard, or you can make a logo really small and put it on a business card, and you could use the same Illustrator file to do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to do is just make a really simple bar chart using Illustrator, and then we're going to look at some more complex methods. So the first thing I'll do is I'll start a new document. We're not going to worry too much about the size of the document right now. We'll just start out with like a letter size, and we can always trim our artboard later. And we're going to use Illustrator's custom charting tool, which is really not the best. I'm going to show you guys probably a better workflow in just a minute, but I think it's worth being aware of this charting tool that Illustrator has. The problem with Illustrator's charting tool is that it's somewhat difficult to work with data in it, and also it hasn't been updated in quite a while. I believe it's been close to 10 years or longer since Adobe's made any meaningful updates to this charting tool. Okay, so you can find the charting tool, or what they call the column graph tool, here in the toolbar. And if you hold it down, you can see there's a number of different types of graphics or infographics we can make with Illustrator, but we'll just start with this tool. And what we do is we just draw a little box in the middle of our canvas where we want our graphic to go. And it, of course, will pop up with a place for us to put our data in tabular form. So I have a little bit of data here that we're going to start working with. And I'll just pull this over so we can look at it for a minute. We're going to be looking at revenue for chocolate in the United States. And this is revenue for different types of chocolate starting in 2023. And it goes up into some projected numbers up into 2025. So we're just going to use data between 2013 and 2020, which is the data that is real and hasn't been projected. So I'm just going to copy that data out of Google Sheets, and I'm going to paste it right here into Illustrator. And the copying and the pasting is kind of the best thing to do. This little spreadsheet thing in Illustrator, it's really finicky and tough to work with. One thing that we have to keep in mind is any numbers that are in our spreadsheet that we don't want graphed, we have to put quotes around. So for instance, 2013 to 2020, we don't want those numbers graphed. Those are years, so we're going to put quotes around them, and you'll see it's really kind of a pain to work. Oops, yeah, with there we go. As promised, kind of a pain to work with this spreadsheet in Illustrator. Okay, so I'm just going to retype these because it's finicky. Okay, so we want quotes around all of these. Okay, now let's go ahead and click that check mark, and hopefully, yep, Illustrator will go ahead and create a nice little simple graph for us, which is good. And we can select that and right click on it at any time to bring this little tool back up. If we right click, we can go to data and it'll show us our data. We can also select type and it'll show us some other graph types that we can create in Illustrator, like a stacked column chart or a bar chart. We'll have to hit OK if we wanted to change it. Or it could even make radar charts or different kind of line and area charts, and etc. There are also some options here, like we could change what side of the axis where our value axis is. A couple other graph options, though not a tremendous amount. The real advantage to creating graphics in Adobe Illustrator is you can really do whatever you want. We're not held back by the limitations of the program. We're really only held back by the limitations of our own skill using Illustrator. So for instance, I can start like selecting tiny little pieces of this. Like let's say I want to get rid of all these tick marks here. I could easily get rid of those. I'll just hide so those are made with the stroke. I can hide them. Or maybe, I don't want to get rid of them. Maybe I just want to get rid of that 0 right there. More likely I might want to get rid of these guys here. All right, so we can really go in and customize this graphic in little ways like this, but also in much bigger ways, as we'll see later. We can change our typefaces. We can really do, virtually anything that we want. Okay, I'm just going to paste in a little headline over here. Chocolate sales explode during the pandemic, right? Which is kind of what we're seeing during 2020 there. Okay, and I'll just bring that down so it's a little bit closer to the chart. Okay, and I want to add a little source down here at the bottom. And for my source, I got this data from Statistia. And let's go ahead and open up some of our type tools here just so we can change that type a little bit. So we'll go to type and then character, which is already open. Over here, there we go. All right, so what font were we using up here? Poppins. So we'll go ahead and use Poppins down here. There it is, and I'll go ahead and make that italic, and that will be good enough for now. So now we can change different aspects of our graph. For instance, we can change the color of different elements. Like let's say we wanted to choose that bar, for instance, since we're highlighting 2020. We want to change that to red. Oops, looks like this bar might be at grayscale, so I can come up here and change my color mode to CMYK and change that to red. You can see there's a stroke on that. I probably want to get rid of that stroke. We could also change, we could select all of our type, say here, and we could change that. Maybe we wanted to make that Poppins. We wanted to make it bold, maybe a little smaller, right? If we wanted to do that, which I don't think we necessarily do. One thing to keep in mind is I have two selection tools here, the selection tool and the direct selection tool. So right now our chart is grouped together as one whole piece, and that allows us to change the data at any point. We could change the data here and the graph would automatically update, which is great, except when we want to select little individual bars or pieces of text. And to do that, we need to use the direct selection tool. Once you get really deep into this, you can actually select your whole chart and go up to Object, Ungroup, which will sort of blow everything apart and let you select every individual element using the selection tool. However, once you do that, it disconnects it from the data, so you can't change your data at that point. So we're not going to do that right now. Okay, so there's lots more you could do here in Illustrator, really, as much as your skill or imagination can take you. That said, I think that this is perhaps not the best workflow with sort of the modern tools that we have available to us. So I might suggest a workflow whereby instead of starting with Illustrator to make a chart, because since the charting tool is very, sort of limited, that we in fact start with a program like Flourish. So here I've made the same chart in Flourish Studio, which is a online data visualization program. And there's a lot, you can do a lot more and really a lot more quickly with Flourish. So I'm not going to go through how to use Flourish, but here's a nice simple bar chart that I made that basically shows the same thing that we just made in Illustrator. And I think this is an easier way to do it. And in fact, there's lots of great programs out there that let you make simple and complex graphics. And the key is exporting out of a program like Flourish in a vector format that Illustrator can easily read and modify. And so that's going to be formats like EPS and SVG, Scalable Vector Graphics. So here in Flourish, I've got my chart. I'm going to go up to Export and Publish, and I'm going to download this in a SVG. And I'll go ahead and click Download. And yes, please save it for us. And SVG is a really powerful format that actually you can do a lot with in code as well. But for today, we're just going to use it to bring in this SVG into Illustrator. So we'll just open the SVG in Adobe Illustrator. Okay. Just say ignore. Okay. Okay. And here we go, right? So we've got our basic line chart. That's actually like a really good place for us to go ahead and start for what we want to do today. So I suggest this as a workflow. I think it's easier and better than creating your graphics in Adobe Illustrator. Though either is fine. Certainly I spent years and years creating infographics in Adobe Illustrator. Okay, so let's go ahead and I basically want to modify this. And the nice thing about an SVG is like all of these elements are modifiable, right? So in fact, I want to go ahead and delete like pretty much everything except my bars at this point. And I want to create, I want to put in everything like myself. Okay, so first of all, let's add in our headline. I'll just copy it from over here since we've already got it, just to save myself a little bit of time. And I'm going to go ahead and tuck that headline here in the space. And I'll make that a little bit bigger just to fit in there a little bit nicer. And I'm going to make a subhead as well. Make a subhead that says changes in sales of in the US by year. Okay, so just do a little like explaining of what my data is. I can use my eyedropper tool to just like copy this style from up here, though in fact I want to make it regular and I want to make it much smaller to make it look like sort of like a subhead or a bit of chatter. There we go. Okay. Sort of line things up a little bit here. Actually just States by year. Okay. Make this a little bigger. I could spend all day sitting here playing with the type. I'll try not to do that. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is just do a couple things to sort of modify this a bit. So, I can select individual bars here. Maybe I want to bring the bars a little bit closer to each other. In fact, I don't necessarily want to do that here. Or maybe I do, right? 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, oops. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The point here being that I am in like complete control, right? I can take a look at I can view rulers, show my rulers, and I can even bring over a little guide, right, to help me make sure I'm aligning everything along a nice hard line there on the left. Much better. I can delete that guide. Okay. Another thing I might like to do now is maybe I want to, well, first of all, I need to bring in my axes, right? So let's go ahead and type some years here so I can bring in my axes. So the first year I've got is 2013. Okay, instead of doing it that way, let's make a little type box. Really, I can just click. All right, so 2013. I'm going to sample this type here. Oops. So sample that type. There we go. Okay, I'm going to bring that down. I'm actually going to place it inside my bar. I'm going to make it bold. I am going to make it much smaller. I'm going to make it white. Maybe I won't make it bold. Okay. Okay, I'm happy with that. And we can zoom in to make this a little easier, which is another thing I love about Illustrator, is just being able to sort of control your view. Okay, so now I'm just going to hold down the Alt key, which will let me easily copy. You can see it's giving me a little line to make sure I'm sort of lining things up correctly. And I can just, I could also just copy and paste depending on how you prefer to work. There's all kinds of ways to work here. I'm just going to go ahead and copy my bars, or I'm sorry, copy my numbers across into the bars. Fabulous. Okay. Now, just for the fun of it, I'm going to go ahead and add some values here at the top so we can actually see what the data is telling us. The top of each bar. I'll make these bold just to make them stand out a little bit. And we'll make sure all this stuff is centered and aligned correctly in just a second. And I'm referring to my spreadsheet here on another screen, which is how I know the values. .3. All right, and the top one is 13.3. Okay, so one thing that's really important in design is to make sure that you're doing all your spacing correctly. And Illustrator makes that really easy with this align panel that we see right here, this align window, which lets us align things and also distribute objects so that we can get the spacing correct. So first of all, what I want to do, all right, let's, so right now what I've selected here is all the bars. And you can see if I delete it, it's easy to see what you're selecting. And I'm going to ungroup those, which means now, all right, let's try it again. Sometimes they're grouped several times. Oh boy. Okay, let's keep ungrouping until we, oh, all right. So maybe we can do it this way. Okay. Okay, so what I've got now is I've got my two numbers and my bar, and I want to make sure that they're centered. There they are now. So I'm going to have to use the individual select and then switch over to the regular select. And then select those three and center. You see that one was really off. Okay. Go, looking good. I'm holding down the Shift button to select several objects at once. There we go, getting close. So a lot of little detail work here, right? Making sure everything's perfect. Maybe we'll zoom out a little bit here so we can get this all on one screen. Fabulous. Okay. Looking good. Okay, so let's do a couple more things to sort of increase this. Well, first of all, let's make sure we add in our source so we don't forget about that. Very important to always include a source. So let's change the color of our bars to, let's make them like a chocolatey brown. Let's see if we can find a nice chocolatey brown. So let's see, I'm gonna just select all my bars here like this. Go, we can see they've all got a foreground color of blue. I'm gonna Google, see if we can find a good chocolatey brown. See if we can come up with something good here. All right, so that looks right to me. What do we got? Okay, I'm just going to copy that. Okay, so let's use that one. So that gave me a hex, which was 7B3FOO. Okay, now we've got like a nice chocolatey brown that we're using for our bars. And now just to take this sort of one more level, I have an image that I want to try to add in. Oops, let me get to my folder here. Okay, let's see. Illustrator Lab. Okay. Here's an image that I found that has sort of like a crinkly foil background, sort of like you might see on the back of a candy bar. So let's see what it looks like. Let's try to drag that image and place it into our canvas. Oh, way too big. Okay. Well, first of all, we could just, first thing we would need to do is we need to get that to the back, right? So we can go to Object, Arrange, Send to Back, right? And already it seems to be looking a little bit better. But what I really want to do is I want to make that background like smaller. So let's see if we can transform scale. Let's do it to like 20%. Oops, oh, that didn't work. Boy, that's huge. Oh, you know why it didn't work? Because it kind of disappeared. It went off canvas. So we need to do, all right, so let's try that again. Transform, scale. Let's try 50%. Okay, it's getting better. There we go. We want to put it in the middle. Then. Okay, so let's try scaling it again. 50, let's do 10. Okay, now we're getting there. Okay, so I'm gonna move that around to the side. I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. Now we're in business, right? Looking a little bit better. And you can see it's kind of interfering with some of my text. So what I might do, and you know, we don't really have to worry about this being scaled correctly since it's just like some crinkly stuff. We could really move that in so it's like matches our artboard there. And so it doesn't, right, it's a little hard to read our text there. So one thing we could do is we could drop down a window called Transform or Transparency. Oh, which looks like it's already open somewhere. Okay, Window, Transparency. There we go. And I can bring down the transparency on that a little bit so it's easy. There we go. So it's easier for us to read our type, but you still get that sort of crinkly foil effect in the background. Okay, so that's cool, right? We sort of made a nice little custom graphic there. And it looks like our bars themselves are a little bit transparent coming over from Flourish, so we actually can see some of the crinkly stuff behind that, though we could also get rid of that if we didn't like it. Okay, so you know, we brought in this graphic from Flourish, which we could make in like 5 minutes or less in Flourish. It brought it in as an SVG, really transformed it and made it our own, and made some more changes to it, right? Which I like this significantly better than in the sort of simple graphic that we made in Flourish. Now I want to say, we could take this significantly further. In fact, this graphic was inspired by a Wall Street Journal graphic, which I'll show right here, which is significantly better than the one I just made. And what they did was they sort of took a similar concept about the rising price of chocolate and created this nice graphics package, right? So for their main graph, they actually used, looks like Kit Kat bars. Really nice job, right? We can tell it's a Kit Kat bar, and they did this nice little sort of artistic thing up here where we see little crumbs from the bar. And then they made a nice graphics package out of it, right? They put the same sort of foil background in the background as we did. And then they made some other graphics in this column where they did the same thing we did, where they just used sort of like a chocolatey brown as the color. Right, so there's a lot of places you can go with this. Okay, let's look at one more example here. So here I've made a chart in Illustrator that just shows college enrollment by percent of the US population. And I went ahead and just prepped this one for us. So I've just got a bar chart that shows that college enrollment has sort of been up and down a little bit in the last, so it's between 2002 and 2018, but that in fact this is a significant increase from 50 years ago when only 3.5 of the US population was enrolled in college. And this is like 6.2 in 2002 and 6.1 in 2018, and a little bit of dips here and there. Okay, so what I thought might be cool is if we replace these bars with a pencil. And so I got this pencil image just for free off the internet. And the important thing here is that it either has a transparent background or a white background, so it's easy for us to use as bars. And so what we're going to do is just resize this to the size of the bars. And generally you want to sort of proportionally resize everything, right? So I'm holding down the shift button as I resize, and that makes sure that the height and the width are resized exactly the same. We actually have a little bit of wiggle room with this one, just because of the way the image is. It's and the bars are fairly similar. We can actually, if we proportionately resize it, it's going to get thinner, and we don't really want that. So here I can sort of just fake it a little bit, just make it a little bit smaller, and I don't think we're really going to notice. Okay, so I'm going to copy each of these over. Oops. Again, you could use Alt to copy, or you can just select an image and say copy and paste, whatever sort of you're more comfortable with. All right, so we're going to change these bars, get the pencil to match the bar. Okay. All right, great. And now, in fact, now that I've sized my pencils the way that I want them, and let's just actually select these pencils and just make sure that they're all aligned along the same baseline here. So I want this one. Here we go. Okay, so did that make any changes? Yeah. Okay, looks good. So now I can actually just like delete my chart, because really my chart was just like a guide. So, okay. Okay, so goodbye chart. Why is it not deleting it? Okay, let's get rid of that. So just please go away. Okay. All right, so now let's modify this and make it look a little bit nicer, right? So I can bring these guys a little bit closer. And in fact, I can use my, that same window we were just using a minute ago. So if I have, this bar and this bar where I want them to be, I can select everything and then tell this to distribute them along the center. There we go. So that's nice. And actually, maybe I want them to be in a little bit closer than that. Okay, maybe even a little bit closer. Don't be shy there, guys. Okay, and now let's make it a little bit bigger. Okay, and I've made a nice little bar chart out of my my pencils here. And of course, I want to add some stuff in here, right? First thing I'll do is I'll add in a line along the bottom, my axes. I'll make that black. And if I can find the stroke, okay, I'll give it a bigger stroke. That's too big. All right, that looks good. I'm going to drop that down a pixel or two. All right, now I'm going to add some value labels here, or axes labels, and then I'll add some value labels. So first of all, let's just say, first one was 2018. And my style, make it a little smaller. 2018. 2014. 2010. 2006. And 2002. Select these guys and make sure they're all aligned correctly and distributed correctly. There we go. Okay. Really, most important here is I want to make sure that they're sort of aligned with the pencil. Okay, so that looks good. And now maybe I'll add just a couple value labels here. So I'll add one here. This was 6.2%. And I want to give that a different type style. So I'll make that regular, and I'll make it bigger. All right, let's move all this around a little bit, give ourselves a little bit more space to work. A little smaller there. And I will label this one here, which is 6.1%. And now, because the values in this aren't that different, we can actually add a line here. An annotation that, okay, so let's say, add a line. Put a stroke. I'll put it behind the pencils. I probably should have thought about this before I got rid of my chart, but we can find a way to dummy it in just a second. Okay, and I'm going to put a little circle here just to mark the spot. I'm basically just going to add like a nice little annotation here. It says, in 1970, only 3.5% of the population was enrolled in college. We can maybe put that down there. We can find a better place for it. Okay, so now we should have kept our chart, our background chart here. We could have calculated this a little bit easier, but there is a way we can dummy it. Okay, so we're gonna, this equals 100%, right, of our total bar here. Now I can scale this, and 3.5 is, let's see, transform, scale, is 57% of 6.1. And so then I can move this down, and that'll tell us where we should move this bar here. I'll go ahead all this so it moves together. Oops. Okay, I need to move all that back now. Object arrange, send to back. Delete this guide. Okay, and now we've created a nice custom chart here using pencils to represent, something education related, which I think most people would relate to right away. It's a nice chart. Okay, so that wraps up our tutorial about making infographics with Illustrator. Thank you.